What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Burning Money Racing Garage. And today we're going to be rebuilding this passenger rear side corner that pretty much blew up in our last race. We sheared drive shafts and all this other kind of fun stuff. So to do that, we're going to have to be able to take the wheel off, brake calipers, replacing drive shaft, replacing wheel bearings and all that stuff. And I'll show you why we got to replace that wheel bearing. It is not a happy camper in there. We did put a brand new one in when we left the track to make sure we could get home. However, I just think without having that clamp force in there, the drive shaft properly secured in, the bearing probably just let go through trailering and moving it back and forth. It's not really set up to behave that way, so the weight on the wheel probably just destroyed the bearing we put in there. Whatever, it's a small little loss. Sucks that we have to replace the bearing again, but it is what it is. Can't go racing with that, gotta replace that. While it's out, I'm gonna look in the controller, make sure there's no damage there, and that could also be a reason why it's doing what it's doing. Hopefully that's not gonna be the case. You can definitely see, push the piston right out there, making a mess everywhere now. I'll just leave that in there, dump all that fluid out. The brake caliper definitely seen better days. Could I rebuild it? Possibly. Maybe I'll have to keep it, see what's going on, but we've actually, if you want to just look right in here, it might be difficult to see, but this entire sleeve area is all deformed out that way because when it hit and ripped it off, it stretched and broke all that. You can see where we painted it, how that all got flexed off, and there's a small little crack right in there. Probably can't see it, but she's there. So much for trying to rebuild these. These things are totally just roasted, they're done. Now this is a fun bit. We get to smash this sucker out. Hopefully she comes out easy. Gotta make sure that when I smash her out, she doesn't go flying too far that way, hit the other car here. Don't have a lot of space to work. Hey, look at that. She came out actually pretty clean. Can probably reuse this hub. She slid right out without ripping the bearing out with it. I don't know if I'll reuse the hub, maybe it's spare, I don't know. Okay, it's all set up to get hammered out by the slide hammer. Again, this is all about brute force. Smash it out as hard as you can. Hopefully she comes out easy. So after inspecting the bearing area for the control arm, I really don't see any damage in there. There's no real significant deformations for the bearing carrier surface. So I don't see any reason why we can't continue with this part. Put a new bearing in there, new hub, put it all back together, and then get on to the rest of the bit, which is putting the half shaft back in and putting this corner back together with brand new brake caliper and all the other goodies. Now it's time to put the lock ring back in, the snap ring. This one's always fun. Just gotta compress it and slide it in at the same time. Hope that your fingers don't slide out. It's a great tool that I have for this. It's on ECS tuning, snap ring tool. It just makes the job so easy. It's ridiculous. I just want to make sure it's seated in everywhere and there's no little bit sticking out, and she's in there nice and good. Now that our bearing is captured, we can go ahead and put our hub back in. But the hub does have a bit of a trick in there. So the bearing on this rear end, it has a single piece outer and a 2-piece inner race. So if I just took this guy and hammered it in like I did the bearing, I'll get it through the first bit, but then the second bit, instead of grabbing into it because there's nothing really retaining it from a lot of force, you're just going to push out the backside and ruin a bearing. Done that myself too many times, so word of caution to you. You can start to hammer this in a little bit, which I'll show you. Then you need to have some sort of tool to be able to squeeze and keep constant pressure on the backside and then press the hub in. I just have a threaded rod with some nuts, and I use some pieces from a ball joint press kit, and that usually does the trick. So you just hammer in just a little bit, not a huge amount, just enough that it's not going to come out. And then you're going to need to get that threaded rod. So this is something that you need to get to be able to crush this together. Nice big beefy threaded rod. This guy, black guy here, is just a piece from a ball joint compression kit, and essentially I'm going to put this on the back side of the bearing to support the back side, thread this rod through, put this nut on the back side, wrench on that nut, and then I'm just going to crank this side tight. As it spins, it'll bring these two together, crushing and clamping the hub into the bearing, and it'll hold everything nice and tight and perfectly square. So that is the outside of the wheel all put back together. As far as the bearing replaced, hub replaced, caliper replaced. The brake line will have to be replaced at a later date. Did not get one in time to do it today. So now the next bit is we have to put the half shaft back in, which involves taking the sway bar out, or at least disconnect from one side and then slide it in and then torque it all down. So we're almost there, just a little bit more to go. The next portion of finishing this rebuild here is getting our half shaft back in that's going through here. To do that though, I gotta take this guy, loosen him off, drop him off, and then also take the sway bar attachment to the control arm off, so that way there's room to wiggle the half shaft up and in there. So just gonna get to that right now. The half shaft is all backing in, all torqued up all nicely. Now just have to reinstall the sway bar, torque that guy all down, and then it's on to the big axle shaft bolt at the end. thing to do is get the big massive axle nut on, slap that in here, and draw that half shaft into its home. So the last thing to do, so just gotta peen the ends of the fastener there, and that's its torque prevailing feature to stop it from falling off. Personally, I prefer cotter pins. I think I might go for a cotter pin solution in the future, but for now, the damage that Shannonville did due to our car with the wheel falling off has been repaired.